Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kendra Brown, and I am the president of the Upsilon Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So grateful that you are joining us this afternoon for our wills and estates and retirement planning workshop. We have wonderful speakers who are going to bring you pertinent information this afternoon. This falls under our international program, Target 3, Building Your Economic Legacy. We're so very grateful that we have been in the Baltimore County community for 26 years, bringing you a service and sisterhood and programs that will help you, that will help us ensure that we are bridging the gaps in our community and being of service to all mankind. So at this time, I am going to turn the program over to our Target 3, one of our co-leads, Cecilia Wright Brown, and she will take it from here. And again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Please engage, please ask questions, and we look forward to the dialogue.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Cecilia Wright Brown, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Target 3 Building Your Economic Legacy. I would like to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Upsilon Epsilon Omega Chapter Wills Estate and Retirement Planning webinar. We have a team of excellent presenters for you and anticipate a meaningful exchange of information. So some things to keep in mind as you listen and apply what you hear to your life and finances. So one of my, role models is Mr. Warren Buffett. He's a renowned investor, philanthropist, CEO, and he has a net worth of over $78.9 billion. So here are four facts that I always remember moving forward when I think about my life and my finances, and I'd like to pass that on to those here today. When you turn your focus to earnings, never depend on single income. Make investments to create a second source. On investments, do not put all your eggs in one basket. When targeting your spending, if you buy things you do not need, soon you will have to sell things you need. And then last but not least, when looking at your savings, do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after savings. Always remember, one of the best things money can buy you is your financial freedom. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend, one of our community partners and the facilitator of today's webinar, Mr. Shawn Hart, Principal and CEO of Hart Wealth Strategies, LLC, headquartered in Timonium, Maryland. He received his degree in finance, investment, and risk management and accounting from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, one of our lovely HBCUs. Shawn's first entry into the financial services was on Wall Street as a stockbroker trainee, and he later transitioned into financial services at Merrill Lynch. He's a native of the Bronx, New York, and something that I really found really phenomenal is Shawn credits his father's subscription to the Wall Street Journal as one of the strongest influencers in his life. He learned about finance and stock exchanges by reading the newspaper daily while he was in middle school. By the time he entered high school, he was trading stocks on his own. Mr. Hart believes in the trial and error method in combination with his time on Wall Street adequately prepared him to become the principal investigator and CEO of Hart Wealth Strategies. I present to you this evening, Mr. Shawn Hart. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Dr. Wright Brown. I really appreciate the opportunity. And first and foremost, I want to thank the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha. And, I want to give a huge shout out to our Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris, who's also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. So, she's also an HBCU grad. So I love that. So I'm just smiling from ear to ear about that situation. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for ladies of Upsilon Epsilon Omega Chapter for presenting me and my team with the opportunity for educating the masses of estate planning, retirement planning, also life insurance and long-term care. Before I get started, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our first presenter, which will be Elsa Smith. Elsa, Elsa is the founder and principal of the law office of Elsa Smith. Elsa focused her practice on wills and estate planning. She has 20 years of experience as an attorney. Her passion empowering women, and I'm telling you, I have seen her empower women on so many levels that it inspires me to even push that culture forward. So thank you, Elsa, for that. Her firm is her firm is a gold. Her firm goal is stem and loss on general wealth through proper planning. She holds a bachelor's degree in business administration. She also holds a Juris Doctorate from University of Maryland. And she's a licensed attorney in the state of Maryland and also in the District of Columbia. Elsa established a noteworthy record of service, professionalism, in the community organizations. Elsa donates her time and volunteers as estate planning attorney to the Pro Bono Center of Maryland. As we all know, a lot of times when it comes to her work, a lot of times it is very, very needed. And a lot of people think that you need a lot of money to have some kind of estate planning. So I'll definitely thank you for the pro bono work that she does. Elsa is also a member of the Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, and Montgomery County Bar Association. Elsa serviced the Estate and Trust law section of the Maryland State Bar Association, and also she's also organized a membership. Earlier this year, Elsa published a practitioner guide on guide to. Sorry, Elsa, my phone died. My phone just died. I was reading this stuff.
That
You
is
want to go?
that
I'm
is
so
that
sorry.
is, no, that is
Elsa,
that
tell
is,
us a little bit more about yourself.
it would be my pleasure. And first of all, thank you so much to the AKAs. Thank you, Shawn, Hart, and Hart Wealth Strategies. I am Elsa W. Smith. Shawn is correct. My law firm is Elsa W. Smith, LLC. We are located in Annapolis, Maryland, but we serve individuals and families all over Maryland. One of the things that Shawn was about to mention is that I published earlier this year an article. It's called it's for fellow estate planning attorneys on remote witnessing, and it's a practitioner's guide and best practices. That is one of my loves, and we dove in. Our section didn't even miss a beat. When COVID-19 hit, we knew that there was an urgency in the public, and we had to meet it head on. So I am proud of the work that the Maryland State Bar and particularly my section has done to do that. Yeah, correct. My passion is empowering women, and through that, their significant others, their spouses. But it's one of my joys to educate and empower. Those are the two pillars of my practice, and I believe that it is sorely needed. Particularly in the minority communities. I am Afro-Cuban descent. So it is one of the joys of my life to be able to serve people who look like me and who may not be uber wealthy, but are hardworking individuals that deserve protection for themselves and for their families. And Shawn, if am I okay to start my presentation?
Yes, please roll right into your presentation.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Again, thank you, Shawn. Today we're going to discuss estate planning in uncertain times, how to get ready and stay ready. So I want you to, everyone who's watching on Zoom and on Facebook, I want you to stay tuned to the end of the presentation for a special gift from me. and it's only for people who have watched today's presentation. So here we go. What are some of the things that are contributing to uncertainty for you in 2020? It's fair to say that the pandemic is one, uncertainty in the economy, and businesses closing. Those three factors, and certainly we can agree that uncertainty has been magnified in 2020. Now, I want to mention some facts before we move on. And this is the first two are according to to a 2020 survey by the American Psychological Association. It says nearly 1/3 of Americans say that economic uncertainty is a source of stress when thinking about the economy. And around 2/3 of Americans cite uncertainty about the future as a source of stress. Now the third one is another fact, not with the survey, but it is not only I've seen it from my own clients, but it's also been documented that fear is a major roadblock to creating an estate plan. So why do I mention this last point? Based on clients that I have served, fear is one of the reasons given most often as to why they didn't start an estate plan sooner. You ask, fear of what? Okay, fear of dying, fear of being incapacitated, fear of having to make hard choices, fear of losing control. So instead of dealing with these realities, we hide, we run, we bury our heads in the sand. This doesn't need to be you. The truth is we all have an expiration date. We will all become ill, and we don't know when nor how serious that illness will be. I want to share a story about a person who became a client. She met with me and I asked her, what prompted her to book a consultation with me. She said that her father-in-law had passed away earlier this year from COVID, and he had nothing in place in terms of estate planning, no will, no anything. Then her father died from COVID as well. So from her vantage point, things were starting to hit a little too close to home. So she had attended one of my webinars, and she said, okay, I've got to take action. I've got to do something now. Oh, excuse me. I think I hopped a little bit ahead of what I needed to. Here we go. She did not have a strategy. When I asked her if she had anything in place, she had no plan at all. So at this point, new clients tend to feel a little embarrassed. They feel like they're the only ones, who've not taken steps to protect their assets and their legacies. I want to let you in on a secret. I was a procrastinator too. So I'm right there with you. But here's the thing. I took action, and it changed the course of my life and my legacy because I made that decision. Now, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that each one of you here at this workshop today was meant to receive this message today. What I need you to know is that as long as you're alive, it is not too late for you to do what is needed to protect yourself and your family. Now, one of the things we have to start off is to really have the conversation with our loved ones. And these are different 4 points that you should cover when you start to have the conversation about estate planning and your legacy with your loved ones. The first one has to do with medical issues. This is one of the most important discussions that you can have with your family members regarding their estate plan. You need to know what healthcare directives exist for parents and close family members, and who is their power of attorney in case they can't make medical decisions for themselves. The next point you want to discuss is insurance. Do you even have insurance? Do they have insurance? What policies are in place? What are the amounts of those policies, and what types are there? Is it term? Is it whole life? And just to give you a heads up, some of my colleagues today are going to be telling you a bit more about that, so definitely stay tuned. The next thing you want to talk about is what is included in your estate. And I had someone ask me the question, a very basic question, well, what is an estate? An estate is everything comprising the net worth of an individual, including all land, real estate, possessions, financial securities, cash, and other assets that an individual controls or has a controlling interest in, right? And the last point is get the right people in the right roles. And let's take a deeper dive into this last point. When we're thinking about who the right people for certain roles are, we need to understand that there are different roles that may exist within a comprehensive estate plan. For example, your personal representative, that's the person in charge of distributing your assets according to your will. Then you'd have a trustee. Their job is to manage assets owned by a trust, and their duty, and they act as what's known as a fiduciary, they act in that capacity. Their duty is to protect and manage those assets for the benefit of a named beneficiary or beneficiaries in that trust. Next, you may have a guardian. If you have minor children, that's the person that you name in your will who will be in charge of a minor child's personal care, providing shelter and ensuring that their medical needs are met. Next, you're probably going to have agents for financial and medical decisions. In a financial power of attorney, that's the person who steps in your shoes while you are alive to act on your behalf in business and legal affairs. In an advance directive, the agent, the person you appoint to speak on your behalf, makes healthcare decisions when you are too sick to make them yourself. And then lastly, we have representatives for burial and or final disposition. Now, this can be the same person that you name as a personal representative in your will, but it doesn't have to be. Now, a question I get asked is, well, why would you name some other responsible person? One reason is you might want to lighten the load on the personal representative you name in your will, because depending on how extensive your wishes are with respect to how you wish, to have final disposition, they can be pretty extensive. Dealing with funeral homes, and if there are other entities, organizations that need to be involved as part of your celebration of life, that may be time consuming. So that's certainly something to consider. Now, I want you to think about the people in your life, and you don't have to limit this to family members. Think about each person's strengths and weaknesses. For example, say your cousin is stylish and she's a really nice person, but she can't manage money. Or worse, she has a long track record of bouncing checks and bad credit. So then you could see how she would not be a good fit for your financial power of attorney. On the other hand, your sister is the one that people turn to when they need someone they can count on. She is methodical and very detailed. She might be a good fit for a power of attorney agent while you're alive, as well as a personal representative in your will. And then your brother. He's great with kids and your kids love him. He has a job and his values are pretty aligned with yours. He would be a good candidate to serve as your kid's guardian if you were to pass away. Now, let me stop here for a second, because I know some of you will say, well, what about my spouse? If I have a surviving spouse, can't he or she fill these roles? The short answer is yes. And many couples that I have served choose each other as the guardians if something were to happen to either one of them. However, the point of this exercise is to get you to think about why a person is the best choice for the role that you've chosen them for in your estate plan. And, you know, let's think about it. What if you and your spouse, heaven forbid, were to die? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a backup guardian? And the legal term is actually successor guardian. So that's what I want to start to get you thinking about. Just have a plan and have a backup. It's also important to ensure that people are aware of, willing, and able to take on the roles that they are assigned. So you've got to talk to folks if you're really considering them to play a role in your estate plan. I want to share a quick note about a fairly recent consultation that I had. A woman was, she actually later became a client, and she was afraid to make the decision of who to pick as a personal representative and fill those other roles that I've mentioned, because she didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. She didn't want to, you know, have like jealousy stir up between the siblings. And I said, wait a minute, this is your estate plan. It's not theirs. And the point is that you, as the parent in this scenario, you know better than me, better than anybody else, what your children's strengths and weaknesses are. And now is the time to just really be brutally honest and say, you know, this Janie is great for this role, but Johnny is not. And let that be that. Because I promise you, you do not want to leave a legacy of chaos and confusion and frankly, frustration on the part of your child who's left to deal with whatever you've assigned him or her. You don't want that frustration because they just don't have the skill set, right? And it's up to you to make the tough call. So what's your game plan? And by the way, hope is not a strategy. And I know you've heard that before. So here's what not having a plan can cost you. It robs your family of peace of mind because they are left to deal with the mess that you have left behind. I want you to think about this one. How many times have we seen families scrambling to make funeral arrangements after someone dies? Oh, what about the money? Yep, here come the GoFundMe campaigns, or as I call them, pass the plate and hope that people can spare a few dollars in order for you to, you know, someone to have a half decent funeral. And on that point, I want to say that, you know, fortunately in my line of work, I get to meet with other professionals, other funeral home directors and owners. And for a middle of the road kind of average funeral, you're looking at about $10,000 to $15,000. And funeral homes want their money in advance. So, and let's not forget the family squabbles that inevitably rise during a time when your family is trying to grieve. You've seen it. Family members jockeying over control over the funeral details, who's going to be on program, and all kinds of foolishness. But that all happens when you don't have a written plan. The other point, the other cost, is that the state decides who gets your assets, not you. Dying without a will means that you die intestate. And for example, in Maryland, if you die and you have a surviving spouse and a child who's a minor, the spouse inherits 1/2 of the intestate property, and the children inherit everything else. Another example is if you die and you have a spouse and children, but they are adults, there are no minor children. Then in that case, your surviving spouse inherits the first $40,000 of intestate property and half of the rest, and the descendants inherit everything else. Your estate pays more in attorney's fees. Now, if you die without a will, The distribution of your property goes through the probate process, which will likely be lengthier and a more difficult process than you would have preferred, especially if you don't have a will, because the court has no guidance whatsoever. And the other point is you don't get to choose who will raise your kids. If you don't have a will, the courts must appoint a guardian for minor children. They will appoint an individual based on the best interest of the child. Now, courts may interview those who, want to serve as guardians for your children. They may even call expert witnesses to testify as to who they think is best suited to raise your child. And depending on the age of the child, courts may ask the child who he or she prefers. And the last thing is that, your legacy is going to be tarnished or ruined by not having a plan. And one famous example of this is Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, over the last 50 plus years since Dr. King's death, sibling disagreements and expensive court battles have caused lasting damage to Dr. King's family. These are the kinds of things that estate planning is designed to prevent. Now, regardless of the size of the estate planning can help keep the peace by appointing trustees and other decision makers. In an estate plan, including a will, would likely have prevented decades of court battles that now threaten to overshadow Dr. King's legacy. The same can happen to your family if you leave them with no guidance and no plan. Now, what tools do you need to get ready and stay ready? I'm glad you asked. Here are some traditional tools that are used in estate planning. The first is a will. Now, a will is a written legal document that states what you want done with your belongings, money, and other assets after you die. Now, a will can include your wishes about what happens or who will care for any minor children. The next is a trust. A trust is a legal arrangement where one person, usually called a grantor, gives legal ownership of specific property to a second person known as a trustee to use to the benefit of a third person called a beneficiary. Now, trusts are used for a number of reasons, but people most often use them like wills to pass property to their beneficiaries. The next tool is a power of attorney. A power of attorney is a document that gives someone legal authority to act for another person. It allows you, known as the principal, to assign a person who's known as an agent to manage your affairs if you're unable to. And to create a power of attorney, an individual has to be 18 or older, 18 years old or older. You need to have the intent to give that power to the person, be mentally competent. By the way, the power of attorney is only effective while you are alive. And normally the power of attorney goes into effect as soon as you, the principal, sign the document. However, there's something known as a springing power of attorney, or there's springing clause within the power of attorney, which gives the agent power only after the occurrence of a certain event, such as when the principal becomes disabled. Next, we have the advanced medical directive. Now, writing your choices about your future healthcare at a time when you can still communicate those choices is going to help make sure your wishes are carried out. Now, for instance, an advanced directive is important when someone is in a coma, on life support, and unlikely to ever recover. Writing down your choices ahead of time can spare family members from heartbreaking choices about whether to keep you on life support. Advanced directives can also state the kinds of treatment you want in different situations. Now, real quickly, in Maryland, the advanced directive has two parts. Part one is where you name your healthcare agent. And part two deals with end of life or near end of life scenarios. And the three, very quickly, the scenarios are first, when death is imminent, meaning doctors have tried what they can, but they've determined that you only have, say, 24 to 48 hours. Death is right away. The next is when you're in a persistent vegetative state. Think of a coma. And that in that scenario, you've heard of people being in a coma for weeks, months, or even years. So that's a completely different scenario. And then the last one is an end stage condition. Most people think of the big C, cancer. And cancer, depending on how aggressive the cancer is, we're talking maybe weeks, maybe months, and maybe even a year. And by the way, and the part 2 of the advance directive is known as a living will. So unless the advance directive says otherwise, it takes effect when an attending physician and another doctor certify in writing that the patient is not able to make an informed decision about their health care. One other point, with my clients, I encourage them to review their beneficiary designations on bank accounts, retirement accounts, investment and life insurance products. These may change over time, and you want to make sure that they are up to date. So we've reached the end of my presentation. Again, I'm attorney Elsa W. Smith. I want to thank Hart Wealth Strategies and Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated Upsilon Epsilon Omega Chapter for the invitation to present today. I want to thank you for caring enough about your legacy to invest the time to attend this valuable workshop. As a reminder, you can connect with me on social media at Elsa W. Smith Law on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. You're also invited to visit and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Elsa W. Smith Law, where you can watch free videos on estate planning topics. And now I will turn it back over to my dear friend, Shawn Hart.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Cecilia Wright Brown. I believe there's some questions that was in the chat. Would you like to go ahead and process those questions, please?
Yes, there is one question. What's the difference between a personal rep and a trustee?
Great point. I did touch on it, but a personal representative is the individual that you place in charge to distribute assets according to your will. The trustee, his or her only function is to manage and protect the assets that are placed inside of a trust.
And another question, this is a two-part question. What grounds would someone have to contest a will? And do you recommend having a handwritten will or registered one with the state? So 2 questions.
Great questions. I'll tell you one common ground that people have to contest a will is whether the testator, the person, who made the will, was under duress. Were they pressured when writing the will? And if that's the case, and if they can prove it to a court, then that's certainly a valid basis for challenging the will. And let's see, the other question is, do you recommend having a handwritten will or registering? 2 very different things. I always recommend, because a handwritten will, it would certainly be valid. Let me preface it by saying that a handwritten will can certainly be valid. Having one prepared is certainly the better option. And if you meet with a professional, you make sure that the will has the protections that you need in it. And the other part of the question is registering one with the state. It's not really registering it with the state. If you're, I know some of our viewers are in Maryland, in Prince George's County, Maryland, say. In every county has one. It's called a register of wills. Same thing in Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County. The better practice, and one that I always recommend to my clients, is to file the original of your will with the Register of Wills. It is kept in their vault, safekeeping, and it is protected. And then if heaven forbid something happens, if you kept, if you, instead of doing that, you decided to keep it in a couch cushion or something, and the house burns down, then, nobody knows what you wanted in your will. Whereas if it's kept in the Register of Wills, and most of them will charge, I believe the state fee is just a mere $5. So it's really inexpensive to make sure that that will is kept, in a vault safely.
Another question we have, is it possible for some to use a template online for these traditional tools as long as they have it notarized, or is it recommended to always seek an attorney due to all the details involved?
Well, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an attorney, but it is, I really discourage people from going, on Google or wherever and just downloading a will, because as I said earlier, there's going to be something missing, and those cookie cutter wills are not tailored to your specific situation. And once you're no longer here, it's too late to make those corrections, right? And you're not going to know, how weak or how ineffective the will is until after, and after you're gone, it's too late. So I definitely discourage that. I do recommend that you seek the services of an estate planning professional, because it's not just about, and I try to stress this to not only my clients, but everyone that I teach, is that a will and estate planning in general, it's not just about generating documents. This is about having a conversation and getting you to think outside of yourself about what legacy you want to leave and how you want to do that. And it's different for every individual. That's why you can't just download something off of, the internet. So that's my recommendation.
Also, this is I guess about a 4-part question. First
I'll
part,
take it one at a time. I'll do my best.
how do you break the ice with seniors on wills and estates?
Yeah, that's a real. I'm not sure if the questioner means about the senior, the elder person's estate, or not. But I'll say that it's preface it, like set the tone of, look, it's not that I'm waiting for you to die to get all your stuff. That's not it. It's, I want to be able to honor you. And the way that I can honor you is not with chaos and confusion. So I want us to just, and start off just having the conversation, even before you meet with an attorney. Say, I want to talk to you, mom, dad. What is it that you want to leave as a legacy? And not just stuff. What is it that's important to you? Is it that that family home that's been in the family for generations? Is it precious heirlooms? You start having the conversation, and if they don't get as defensive when they don't see you as like a vulture waiting to strike once they die. It's about how do we honor you properly, with all the love and the care that you deserve. So I think that's the way to start the conversation.
Then the next question is, how often does the will, or should a will be updated?
Oh, great question. I'd say anywhere from 3 to 5 years, or upon the happening of what I call a major life event. That's a birth, a death, a divorce, an adoption, a purchase of significant property. Those are major events, but generally, it's always a good idea to put eyes on your estate plan every 3 to 5 years. For my clients, I actually have a tickler on my calendar to give them a call in a few years, just to say, hey, it's Attorney Smith, don't want anything, just want to check on you, how the family is doing, if anything, if we need to look at anything. And if we don't, fabulous, then, the will and everything else can stay as is. But if something does happen, then it's a cause to come back and, just talk about it and see if we need to tweak some things. Because an estate plan is supposed to evolve as you and your family and your needs change. It's not a static set of documents.
So the next two questions from this particular attendee, I think that they're more geared towards probably Roger, Izaac, or Shawn. So I'm going to defer to them, and we'll circle back, attendee, to your questions. The next question, can a will be valid across state lines? The person lives in another state with property, home resident is in Maryland.
I'm always hesitant when you're talking about another state, but I will say this: if the will that was finalized in another state was done according to the standards set in Maryland, the person should not have an issue with that will.
Then how often should you review your will? And you already answered that question.
I did.
Should a will be notarized?
In Maryland, it is not a requirement. I am only licensed in Maryland and DC. I don't know about other states, but in Maryland, it is not a requirement, and I believe not in DC either, but certainly not in Maryland.
If a will is created by a parent and then they remarry, would their spouse take the place of the previous designation of power of attorney?
Okay, if this and the power of no. No, that's one of those major life events that I just mentioned. And that is, wow, that is such an important and in some cases kind of tragic scenario. Say that you have a will and you're married to spouse A, you get divorced, and now you're married to spouse B, but get this, your will is still naming spouse A. And in addition, if you have life insurance, spouse A is still on the beneficiary designation. Roger and Shawn and you guys, I know you can speak to that. But yeah, the money's going to spouse A because that's what you've designated. That's a major life event. That's huge. And it can be the cause of such great heartache. And, spouse B is just left holding lint because nothing is going to him or her.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see here. If someone does not have an advance directive, who is next in line for decision-making power first? And they say, for example, if an adult is not married, but they have 5 adult children, who is in charge here?
That's a tough decision, a tough call to make. I can tell you that when that person, let's say, is being, real life scenario, they're wheeled into the emergency room, the doctors are not going to pick who's the eldest child. That's not how it works. And sadly, they have to decide amongst themselves who that individual is going to be, to make those decisions. There's no hierarchy when you have a number of siblings.
Okay. All right, then. We have one question. This is they want to know, does a $100 offer cover tweeting and existing wills? Does your $100 off cover tweeting and existing wills?
Tweeting? Is that Ed?
Is it twining or tweeting?
I think tweaking.
Oh,
Maybe
tweaking.
Tweaking. Oh, okay.
It could consider it, depending on the nature of the edits, because sometimes people will say, well, I just have a minor edit. Well, I'll say, well, let me be the judge of that, because if there are a number of them, then they could be so fundamental that the document needs to be redrafted. But yes, I'd be willing to apply that credit to that kind of service.
So we're going to round off. This will be the last question for your session. When is a dual power of attorney used, and can it be used after death?
To my knowledge, there is no dual. Perhaps the
Might have been a
chatter,
typo.
or perhaps it's durable power of attorney.
Perhaps that's
Yeah,
what they meant.
okay, that sounds about right. Power of attorney is only valid while you are alive. It does not go into effect when you die. And a durable power of attorney is helpful when because it can remain in effect even when you become incompetent, like when you're not able to manage your own affairs. So a durable power of attorney is helpful.
And then what's the general cost?
That depends on, I never quote a fee because estate planning is very individualized and it varies with each individual circumstances.
Okay. All right, then. So thank you so much. Mr. Hart, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. So just for the time's sake, we're gonna keep rolling. Izaac is up next. I'd like to go and introduce Izaac. Izaac is my life insurance consultant. When you're talking about brilliancy, he's a brilliant person when it comes to life insurance as a whole. He understands planning. He was a producer for about 7-8 years. Izaac. 7-8 years. He stepped into this role about a couple years ago, just to help more agents, making sure that we are, advisors have the appropriate needs, resources that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and let Izaac go ahead.
Thank you very much, Shawn. Give me 1 second and I'll share my screen here. But, first and foremost, Shawn, I want to say thank you, and thank you to the Upsilon Epsilon Omega chapter for letting me be a part of this session. I'm excited to be here. I'm always excited to talk about the fun of life insurance, if you will. And, my name is Izaac Reis. I'm the life product consultant. My job is really just to help educate all of the advisors within the New York Life Insurance Company on the products and solutions and concepts that we offer, but more importantly, help explain those options and concepts and strategies to all of the consumers we work with. And, when I think about life insurance, in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, I think a lot of us, we understand what life insurance is, right? It's that foundation of protection to protect what we earn, what we owe, what we own. Ultimately, it's to help protect those we love. But what I want to share today is really what life insurance does. It's so much more than a protection-based vehicle. And we talk about strategies that we incorporate with life insurance planning to help our clients get from where they are today to where they want to be and really help them get to the best retirement picture possible. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about life insurance, and you're going to hear me use the famous T word, taxes. But I will say, here at the New York Life Insurance Company, we don't give specific tax or legal advice, but we do work with any of your tax or legal representatives that you may already have. So we'd be more than happy to share those ideas that we go over today with those individuals as well. But let's get into it. Team, when I think about retirement, it's really important to take a step back and look at what is retirement like today. And quite simply, retirement is a lot different than what it was in the past, mainly because of some medical advancements and a lot of us living healthier lifestyles. Oftentimes that means people are living longer than ever. And here we've had longer life expectancies than ever before. And what that means is, quite simply, we're going to spend more time in retirement than any other generation previously. And so when we think about planning for retirement, Cecilia, I think back to what you said when you started this with Warren Buffett. It's about making sure we have different sources of income to help us in retirement. And one of the sources that was very common were pension plans. But I will say, sitting here today, less than 25% of companies and businesses in the Fortune 500 still offer things like pension plans and guaranteed income. And what that means is we've got to take the burden upon ourselves. Our personal savings is more important than ever before. And when I think about how our perspective is, it really changes in our earning years, our working years. The pre-retirees, oftentimes we've got different goals. We're willing to take on some higher risk in our investment accounts. We're really focused on growing our wealth and growing our assets. Oftentimes we think about that T word, taxes, and we think about how do we defer taxes today and maybe worry about that burden later on in life. And quite honestly, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about the volatility of the stock market, in our earning years, we've got more time to recover than ever before. But when we get to retirement, that landscape shifts. And really, we look at the risk tolerance of a lot of our clients in retirement. Oftentimes, that risk tolerance lowers. The focus shifts on not growing their assets, but figuring out the best strategies that we can put in place to help distribute those assets to create income when you need it. We oftentimes now we start looking at, well, how do we reduce the tax liability of our income in retirement? And in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, the retirees, they're more vulnerable to down markets than ever before. So what we do at the New York Life Insurance Company is put strategies in place to make sure we can protect you, give you income when you need it, help reduce some of the tax liabilities that we may face, but more importantly, reduce some of the volatility that you may have with your other retirement assets. It's important to take a step back and ask this question. I want all of you to think about this. How will taxes affect your overall planning that you're doing today? Taxes is a real big hot topic, especially in today's environment. And quite simply, it's because of the chart you see on your screen. You see, tax rates today are at historical all-time lows. But we don't know where these tax rates are going to be in your future. We always say at the New York Life, we cannot predict the future. But our job, and with the Hart Wealth Strategies Group, our job is to help protect you for anything that could happen. And what we look at with a lot of planning that we do with clients is, how can we diversify your assets? Again, the famous Warren Buffett line from Cecilia, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And oftentimes that word of diversification, we really look at how do we diversify the tax liability that you're going to have on your retirement assets in the future as well. See, it's really important to have this conversation because, decades ago, tax rates were really high. Again, it was different for the generations previously. And not only did they have extremely high tax rates, you'll see on this screen, 1979, 1980, highest tax rate was 70%. But they had a lot of different individual brackets. That's not how the tax system works today. In the new tax reality, we need to make sure that we're really taking the benefits necessary of deferring income. But those benefits, they may not be as compelling as they once were. Knowing we're in lower tax rates today, and knowing that there's less tax brackets for us, it means that we need to look at some different strategies, some non-traditional solutions. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what life insurance is. It's a non-traditional solution that we use with clients to help them plan and save for the future. When I think about saving money, it really, at the end of the day, every account and every asset that you can save money in, it falls into one of these three categories that you see on the screen here. It's all about how the money grows. So when you have income and you make income today, you've got a choice into how you save your income. You could take some of that money and you could put it into that purple bucket, which is what we call the taxable bucket. As that money grows every single day and every single month, every single year, you pay taxes today on the growth that you see inside of those types of assets. And then you've got a second strategy and a second choice, the tax deferred bucket, where you can put money into certain vehicles today. And the benefit is you don't have to pay taxes today on the money you put in. And as that money grows every year, it grows tax deferred. No tax liability as it grows. But when you go to take money out, oftentimes that's retirement. When you take money out of these tax deferred vehicles, all of the money you put in, all of the growth that you've seen in these assets will now be subject to ordinary taxes. And it'll be at whatever tax rates are in the future. Which leads us to the third option. You have an opportunity today, ladies and gentlemen, to take some of your income and take some of your earnings and save it inside of what we call tax-free income vehicles. And what that means is the money inside of these assets, as it grows, it also grows tax deferred. But when you go to take the money out later, every dollar that you take out is 100% tax-free. And we use all of these different buckets to help our clients diversify their overall assets for their future retirement needs. Now, right now, there's three things I say that's the tax perfect plan, if you will. You see, the tax perfect plan works something like this. You're able to look at your contributions and you can deduct your contributions. And as your money grows, it all grows tax deferred. And then we look at distributions. The money that comes out, 100% tax free. Unfortunately, you can't have all three of those choices, but you can have two of the three. And you'll see the financial vehicles, and most of them that I know Hart Wealth Strategy specializes in. But you could have the choice of making your contributions tax deductible and letting that money grow tax deferred. But then all the money that comes out is taxable. And those are assets like IRAs, 401ks, profit sharing plans, depending on the instruments that your company or business provides. But there are other options. And the second option that a lot of our clients look at are the after-tax contribution assets. These assets, they get the same accumulation benefit of the tax deferral, but when you take the money out, every dollar, like I said, comes out tax-free. And there's only 3 legal ways to get this type of opportunity. Most of the time we talk about Roth IRAs, tax-free municipal bonds, but more importantly, that is the opportunity that you have with cash value life insurance. It's more than just a death benefit and a protection strategy. It is a way to accumulate wealth on a tax favorable and quite simply a tax-free basis. See, we talk about this strategy of diversification, and we talk about it from a tax liability standpoint. And I'm going to walk you through some clients that we meet that do not have a tax diversified strategy for their retirement income. Oftentimes we'll meet individuals where all of their savings is in one basket, in that taxable bucket. So when you look at creating $100,000 of income in the future, every dollar comes out taxable. And looking at today's tax rates, those could change in the future. But today's tax rates, that would put this individual in a 22% tax rate, which means $22,000 out of the income that you would create from these vehicles. I always say it's going to go to our least favorite family member, the one that's not being invited to Thanksgiving around the corner, and that's Uncle Sam. Which means, as an individual, the amount that you get to keep for your retirement, for your lifestyle, to maintain your standard of living, is going to be $78,000 net of tax. But if we were to recategorize some of the assets you may have today, or change where you're saving some of your money for the future. We could create a true diversified strategy. And we'll give this individual the same $100,000. And let's look at how this works. $50,000 will come out from the 401k or that qualified retirement plan. And again, that is taxable. But because we only take out $50,000, we've now lowered the tax liability on your income to a 12% tax rate, which means now Uncle Sam is only going to take $6,000. But we still need another $50,000. And this is where we look at strategies like cash value life insurance, where it gives you the opportunity to take advantage of what we call the living benefits of life insurance, having access to cash if and when you need it. And when you take money out of this cash value life insurance vehicle, you'll notice one of the benefits is all of the money comes out 100% tax-free. So when you take out $50,000, that's an effective tax rate of 0. Uncle Sam doesn't get to touch any of that money, which means collectively, in total, by utilizing just a more diversified approach to your savings in the future, we're able to create more income in the future when you need it. $94,000 for $78,000. Which income stream would you rather have? This is a strategy that we use a lot at the New York Life Insurance Company to help create more income in the future, in retirement, when most of us need it most. Now, it's more important, I would say, to remember the other risks. There's a lot of other risks outside of tax risks, and oftentimes we talk about longevity risk, running out of money or outliving your assets because of what has happened with life expectancies today. Oftentimes we talk about market risk, interest rate risk, the ups and downs, volatility of the market, inflation risk. Now, I know my dear friend Roger Banville will join us in a minute and probably talk some about the market risk, but there's also things to think about like spending risk, ladies and gentlemen, the unexpected medical costs, the unexpected emergencies that come up, but even sometimes just having money available to celebrate the milestone events in life. Maybe for you, your spouse, your children, sometimes it's even the grandchildren. What we want to make sure that we can help individuals and families do is really help eliminate these risks in retirement. And what you'll notice here is one of the biggest risks is that market risk. And when we look at volatility of the market, we look at rates of returns. What can we earn in the market today? I'm going to show you the historical performance of a conservative portfolio, 35% stocks, 65% bonds. And what you'll notice is over the last 15 years, the average rate of return of this type of portfolio is 5.87%. And notice that's with only 2 down years in the market. But what if we could eliminate or get rid of those 2 down years? Ladies and gentlemen, that would help increase your overall returns to over 7.5%. We want to protect you from the volatility in the market. And with Hart Wealth Strategies and the New York Life Insurance Company, there's a number of different solutions and strategies we use to help protect you from the down years of the stock market. Now, unfortunately, the down years will happen. And just because they happen, it doesn't mean that life won't go on, right? I think back to one of the most recent significant drops, 2008. People still retired. People still got married and had children and bought homes and went to college. People still passed away. Life doesn't stop just because of the uncertainties of what's going on in the market or in your retirement plan. But that's where, again, life insurance is really a foundational tool that you can use from a protection standpoint, but from a living benefit standpoint. And whole life insurance allows us to give you that type of flexibility to guarantee you as an investor and to guarantee your retirement portfolio doesn't have to lock in those down years of the market. Locking in down years of the market, it quickly depletes portfolio balances. When you create other assets and you diversify and save in other areas, we can help make sure that you have other assets that are there when and if you need them. And oftentimes, whole life insurance can be that asset. I'm going to show you a quick example here before I go. This is the last 20 years. Same portfolio, 35% stocks, 65% bonds. And it's showing an individual that has a retirement balance. And this individual is taking out income every single year from their portfolio, including those 2 red years, those 2 down years in the market. What you'll notice on the screen, unfortunately, starting this income at age 66, ladies and gentlemen, this individual with real historical returns ran out of income, ran out of assets by age 84. Your question is, will you still be here? Will you still need income? Will you still need assets to help you for some of those future years that most of us will see? By incorporating what I call a buffer asset, this is where we can guarantee at the New York Life, we can guarantee to make sure your money is still there. If we put in a buffer asset, we can give you the income, even in the down years, but we'll take it from other areas so you don't lock in those losses. Shawn, you know this. We talk about it a lot with your clients. This is a way where we make sure you never outlive your money. You never lock in those losses, but you always have the protection there when you need it. Cash value life insurance is what we use in a lot of our planning to help clients reduce those risks, the market risk, longevity risk, more importantly, the spending risk. So ask yourself today, number one, do you need life insurance? Does the current plan and strategy that you have in place, does it take care of your needs, your goals, your objectives? If you could change anything, would you? Heck, if you could go back 10 years ago, think about where you're at today. Would you have done anything differently? If your answer is yes, then that gives you the opportunity to work with one of my favorite advisors. Shawn, I'm not just saying it, you know I mean it, but that gives you the opportunity to talk to people like Shawn Hart and the Wealth Strategies Group and the New York Life Insurance Company to see if we can help you put together some plannings for what your future goals are. So Shawn, I want to say thank you very much for letting me be with it. And again, to all of the ladies that helped us coordinate this and the organization, I appreciate the time you give the New York Life Insurance Company and the time you gave me. So Shawn, go ahead and kick it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Izaac. Thank you. I'm just looking at the chat. Someone wants to know when is a good time to go ahead and convert. I know you love this question. Convert from term to whole life. Speak on that, man.
Well, Shawn, you know, this is a conversation we get a lot right here. But I'll tell you, you know, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing you've got to remember when it comes to life insurance planning, the longer you wait, the more it can cost. And what we want to make sure we can do is be able to give you that right plan, the proper plan, that permanent protection for the best, lowest cost that you can provide. But it's more than cost. I think it's important, Shawn. There's a lot of different products that individuals can use and convert their term policy to. I think it is important to really get an understanding of where you are today, what are your goals, and really figuring out how much is the right amount to convert to make sure that you have that permanent plan in place when you need it.
Hey, Shawn, there's a question. It's from one of the previous from Elsa's group. They wanted to know, how do you determine why or if you should go term life or I'm assuming whole life insurance? How do you determine?
Yes. So the best thing to do is, number one, is sit down and figure out what are the needs, right? Because it's not a one size fit all. So sometimes you can buy the big bulk of term that will satisfy the need, and sometimes people who are getting older, we also like to determine, put a little some whole life in there, for universal life. It all depends. I don't like to go products. I just like to make sure that, number one, what exactly is the need, and make sure we solve the need. So go ahead.
Yeah, Shawn, the one thing I always say, again, it comes back down to the protection mindset is protecting what you earn. So we look at income, right? Protecting what you own. We'll look at your assets, what you have in place. Protect what you owe. A big thing is if there's debts, we don't want to leave the burden to the family. And then lastly is legacy, those you love. When we look at those four areas, and Shawn, like you said, we figure out what is the overall need, the amount that you need to take care of all of those different things. Then we got to figure out how long is the need there. If it's a short-term or mid-term need, then term insurance becomes a very valuable resource and solution for some of those needs. But oftentimes, even for some of the midterm and especially the long-term needs, oftentimes permanent insurance will be always the most affordable option for the long term, because term is a means to an end. It will run out at some point. So it's about, really figuring out what is the overall need and what's the right balance based on the needs every individual has, Cecilia.
And then they also wanted to know, do you have resources for getting insurance for the aged with pre-existing conditions? I know that's always a big thing with insurances is pre-existing conditions.
Yeah,
So
without a doubt.
go ahead.
Shawn, go ahead.
No, yeah. So we do have solutions for that. Sometimes it is all depends on what type of conditions it is. There are different companies out there that offers different solutions. So we'll definitely take a look into that situation and make sure that we recommend the appropriate thing. I'm sorry, I'm just typing back inside this chat. Sorry.
There's things that we look at, from pre-existing health conditions. Then, there are things offered like simplified issue underwriting or guaranteed issue life insurance. So we can make sure that there is still a strategy or a protection plan in place, no matter the age or the situation of the individual if they need it.
Then there's a question. This person is a teacher.
That's Roger's question. That's a 4-3B. I just answered it.
Okay. How do you determine, okay, we did the whole life versus term life. And how do you determine how much is too much or not enough?
It's a great question. One that we deal with a lot. It comes down to really doing the right needs analysis. Again, looking at how much do we need to replace your income if that's important to you? How much do we need to pay off the debts? What other assets are there that could be used to take care of 2 or 3 of those needs? And ultimately looking at, legacy or estate planning, tax liabilities on assets. All of those things come into play. There's not a right amount for every person, but there is for every individual plan. And that's where, working with an advisor like Shawn does a great job in asking the right questions, figuring out what's important to you and your family and your loved ones to really determine the appropriate amount of life insurance based on your individual needs.
And then the last question is there such a thing as needing life insurance if you have enough to pay everything with a savings?
Yeah, that's something that a lot of clients bring up. It's kind of, I use the terminology, self-insuring at that point, if you will, right? We've got enough assets to take care of those things that I mentioned. The question then at that point becomes, well, is there a better way to leverage your assets? And that's where life insurance really gives a leverage unlike any other instrument, but also a leverage from not just that protection standpoint, from the growth and accumulation standpoint, from some of the permanent vehicles we use that could be quite simply maybe a better cash alternative than just holding cash in some of the low interest rate institutions that are out there in today's economy.
I don't want us to get too behind schedule, but there was one last question. What do you think about the infomercials for the elders that offer insurance no matter the condition? Is that a scam?
I always just say, tread lightly and make sure that you are truly informed, because sometimes you'll realize that things you hear or things you see, they look good, they sound good, they feel good. But Cecilia, I use the
They're
term
not good.
where there's a gimme, there's a gotcha sometimes. And oftentimes you'll see some gotchas in some of those situations. So when you have questions like that, Shawn, I know you're an expert in looking up all of the things that are out there for anyone. And that's where you reach out to Shawn and say, hey, Shawn, I saw this on the news, or I heard about this commercial. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And it gives Shawn or even myself an opportunity to research it and make sure that it's something that would be worthwhile to look at.
Okay, Mr. Hart.
Thank you so much, Izaac. I really appreciate that. Let me go ahead and introduce Roger. Roger Banville and I have been working together for the past literally 8 years. It's been 8 years, Roger. We've been working together. Roger and I, we have moved millions and millions of dollars. We're not even exaggerating. Just out of hands of different advisors, different companies, and making sure that clients, have money to live for the rest of their life, and they never run out of money. So, Roger, he's from up north, which is Connecticut. Roger has a MBA in business administration, more emphasis in finance. And I'm going to go ahead and let Roger go ahead and talk about it. You're on mute, Raj. Thank you.
Some people prefer me on mute. This way I can appease everybody. Good afternoon or good evening. Now that the sun has gone down, we've changed the clocks and it's dark out. So may I be the first to welcome you to a good evening. I want to thank you very much for Alpha Kappa Alpha and all the hard work, and Kendra and Cecilia and everybody behind the scenes of putting this together. And when Shawn asked me to be a part of this, I remembered last year when we did this and how much fun we had. I think the maintenance people kicked us out of the building. So certainly I enjoy working with you all and being a part of it. And if you were at the one that we had last year live, then the focus is to give you more information so that you can be more empowered with your decisions. And that's what today is all about, is to give you information to make you more empowered. So I do like to start off with this slide here, because yes, I want to take you to the top of the mountain. Tonight we're going to climb up that mountain. We're going to get to the top. We're going to rejoice, and boy, we're going to enjoy that ride down that mountain, right? But we got to be cautious. The risks of going up that mountain are different than the risks coming down that mountain. And we're going to be hitting that a little bit today, right? Now, we know the marketplace has been, it's just been an absolutely crazy marketplace this year, right? And the end of February, the market hit an all-time high, only to see by the end of March, 1 month later, less than 30 days later, we were in a full-fledged bear market. And not just any old bear market, it went down more than 20%. It actually went down 36%, which is what an average bear market is. Now, normally, we get ready for a tough next 12, 24, even 36 months after we get into a bear market. No, 2020 had another thing in store for us. We came back ripping and roaring in about 5 months. And we saw everything came back up, and we hit all-time highs. This past week, right, the Dow Jones was flirting with all-time highs again. So it's been really, I feel like what I've been sharing with people is we've been experiencing about 5 years of market exposure in just about a 6-month time frame. So if you're looking at your investments, you feel like your investments have gone through the ringer. I know with everything that's been going on out there in the environment, a lot of us, if not most of us, feel like we've been put through the ringer. Well, our investments also went through the ringer this year, right? They were not protected from much. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Some of you are currently going up your mountain. You are still working. You are still putting money away. You're still saving money a little bit from each paycheck, putting it away, and trying to build up your assets, right? For the day that you can get to the top of your mountain, you can sit there and you can scream out to the rest of the world, go out to your deck, out in the backyard and scream, I made it, I am retired. Only to realize now you got to figure out how you're going to get down that mountain and get down that mountain safely. Now, there's going to be a lot of overlap with what you heard from Izaac and what you heard from Elsa and what I have to talk about here today. But I'm going to be putting everything like into a ribbon around it all so that hopefully it makes a lot more sense for you. I want to talk about going up that mountain. And I want to talk about 4 major rules of the road that we need to follow for going up that mountain. Now, some of you, this first rule, pretty much most of you have already heard, right? The old adage, right? About 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't watch a TV show without seeing an ad from a mutual fund company that said, you can't time the market, it's time in the market. Maybe you remember that phrase. It's not timing of, but time in the market, right? Well, I want to prove it to you, right? And I saw this happen in this year alone. If you put your money in the market, right? And I'm going to talk about a 24 from a year from December 2004 to December 2019, right? You left your money in S&P 500, you actually would have received a 9% rate of return. A lot of people have a hard time digesting that because they're not getting anywhere close to that. But that's what the average index is showing from 2004 to 2019. Now, if you tried to time it just a little bit, money doesn't do well. For example, in March of this year, the market came down. I saw people pull their money out and sit on the sidelines and wait for the market to come back. Wait to be proven that the market is not going to continue sliding down. What usually happens is you miss the best days of the market. The best days are the day after it bottoms out, right? Followed by the best 10 days right afterwards, best 20 days afterwards, best 30 days, so on and so forth. But if you miss the first 10 days, it took you 10 days to realize, to recognize, to acknowledge that, oh yeah, okay, maybe this bear is over, time to get in, bam, your returns just got cut in half. You're looking at a 4.13%. Think that this can't happen to you? I have had some heartaches occur this year alone. People saw the bear market, they pulled their money out, and gosh forbid, life happened. More important things in their investments happened. Things like getting sick, right? Getting COVID. And I've heard these stories, I've seen these stories. They're now fighting for their lives. The last thing they need to worry about is their investments. Well, what ended up happening? Thank goodness the people I've spoken to got better and they got healed, but they now are so far behind the 8 ball because they were not in the market when the market healed. So when you're growing your assets, one of the rules of the road is to keep your money invested in the market, right? Now, there's 3 other rules of the road: asset allocation, diversification, rebalancing. And I want to prove that these are important to you. What I want to share with you here is a breakdown from year to year, from 2005 all the way out to 2019. Every asset class ranked from best asset class to worst asset class. Now, I don't want you to get your eyes dizzy taking a look at all these, but very quickly, 2005, foreign stocks was number 1. Number 2006, foreign stocks were number 2. Rarely, they're number 1 again. Rarely is the same asset class number 1 back to back. 2007, the orange box, your large growth stocks, then your bonds, and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you follow, and I'm going to pick the large cap, the large growth stocks. These are the Apples of the world, the Googles of the world, the Sunocos of the world, the companies you and I all know, and we're using their products, right? But I want to follow the orange one. It's a little easier to follow. Not only do we know those stocks, but it's easier to follow that orange box. And if you follow that orange box from year to year, what you're going to see is the first year it's in the middle, the second year it's at the bottom, third year it's in the top, back to the middle, back towards the top third, back to the middle, back to the top, middle third, middle third, middle third, top, drops back down to the bottom in 2016, rockets back up to the top in 17, and you can see it just keeps going up and down, right? Well, 96% of the reason why a person gets the returns they get is because the asset class they're in. Come on, do you ever think about maybe buying something called Bitcoin? Maybe medical marijuana, right? What do we usually see is they take off and then they drop. And if you're in those stocks when they take off, great. If you're in large cap when it takes off, great. But if you're not, if you're in it when it goes down to the bottom, that's not so good. So how do you protect yourself? Having the right asset class is important, but how do you protect yourself? You diversify. You make sure you have a piece of that asset class. So in the middle, you're going to see this dark blue box. It's large value stocks. I'm sorry, the blended, which is the purple box. The blended, which is a diversified portfolio. It's going to have some foreign stocks in there. It's going to have some bonds. It's going to have some large growth. It's going to have some small growth. It's going to have mid growth. It's going to have all different types in that basket. And what you'll notice, right, and I'm just going to try to follow it from year to year with my cursor, is you're going to see that this pretty much, yeah, it's going to go up and down, but it's pretty much going to stay in that middle third every single year. Meaning you're going to get the returns, but it's going to be a smoother ride. It's not going to be as much up and down. So staying the course, having the right asset class, and diversifying your portfolio, making sure you have that right asset class by diversifying are three of the key rules to having a good portfolio and getting the returns you need to get over time. But of course, you need to have the right funds, right? And Wealth Strategies, being a part of the New York Life, having the access to the New York Life platform. New York Life is a top 26 asset manager in the world. Every fund company out there wants to do business with New York Life, right? So wealth management has access to all of these different companies, right? So we will be able to pick and choose who to bring in and when. You're going to have one company that's really good at large cap. You're going to have another company that's really good at small cap. Another company that's good at bonds. One company can't be good at all of it. They can't be the best at all of it. But being able to pull from each one of these to build a diversified portfolio to give you what I like to refer to an all-star lineup of fund managers will get you to the finish line. It's going to get you to the top of the mountain quicker, smoother, safer, the way you wanted to do it, right? Now, that being said, not all of our clients want to have the risk of the market. They understand and they appreciate the market, but they get a little bit queasy because, let's face it, this is our hard-earned cash, right? You can't really just go out and rebuild it like that. Market taketh, market growth, market taketh away. Some of our clients like to build some guarantees or bring in some financial planning perspectives where we can bring some guarantees in place. And I do want to mention some of the different financial planning strategies that we sometimes implement. It's not going to be right for everybody, but sometimes what we do, particularly if a person is on the tail end of their working years and they can't afford to take a loss, is we look to potentially put in some types of guarantees. That's right. I am talking investments and I am using the word guarantee, right? Now, what I'm guaranteeing or what I'm saying we can guarantee isn't necessarily a growth, but actually a guarantee on your principal so you won't lose. Guarantee initial investment. So I'm going to give you an example, a hypothetical example. If a person invests $100,000, we're going to guarantee that they're going to have at least that $100,000, 10, 11, 12, 13 years down the road, depending on how we build it. There are ways to put guarantees in place on their investments. And that's really what I wanted to let you know. There are ways to guarantee an investment, right? Not right to do with everyone and not right to do with all the different pies of a portfolio, but with a piece of it, it certainly can make some sense. I like to use the analogy, right? So my wife and I live in the Annapolis area. And I think everybody here is aware of the bridge right in Annapolis, right? If last time I checked, I think it was 3 miles long. Pretty tall, pretty high, pretty wide. Every time I go across that bridge with my wife, she goes, "What are you doing?" I look, I'm like, "Oh, that's right." Put my blinker on. And I move the car to the center lane. It's 3 lanes going each way. She doesn't want me driving by the edge. She doesn't want me going by the edge. Why? Well, she knows I like looking at boats, right? And what happens when your eyes look some way when you're driving? The car tends to go that way. She doesn't want to end up in the Chesapeake Bay. Right, I don't want her to end up in the Chesapeake Bay either, probably more so than myself. I care for myself, but I care for her just as if not more. Got to take care of her. So I get into that center lane. But here's what I noticed. Whenever we approach that bridge, it got me to pause and look at this. And I noticed whenever we approach that bridge, the traffic flow tends to slow down, not speed up, right? In fact, most people go below the speed limit when they hit that bridge, right? And I started asking myself a question, why? Why? Why do people slow down? Why do you want me to get in the center lane? I get the conversation flow in my eyes, but I have never hit that guardrail. Never, ever hit that guardrail. And I'm guaranteeing you, most of the people, probably 99.9% of the people that slow down approaching that bridge also have never hit a guardrail. Then caused me to ask the next question. What if we didn't have a guardrail? All those people that slowed down, would we not go over that bridge? And I've had a lot of people admit to me that they would not go over that bridge. My wife wouldn't go over that bridge, right? Are you kidding me? I'm like, but why? You never hit a guardrail. You really don't need it. I get it. I understand it. We want to be safe. Better to be safe than sorry. We'll think of the guarantee as a way to keep somebody to continue to allow an investor to continue growing at a rate that they should be growing as they're starting to get to their finish line. As they're starting to get, shouldn't call it a finish line, should call it the top of the mountain because the race isn't over. That's the halfway point of the race, right? We want to keep going the speed we need to go, and putting the guardrails on, putting the guarantees can help us maintain that speed. Now, I just mentioned that it's not the end of the race because we're at the halfway point, right? We're at the rejoicing point. We have some parties. We have fun. Here we are. We're retired. Now we're coming down that mountain. Now we're coming down that mountain, and we want to make sure it's a safe and enjoyable ride. We want to look at we want to see the beauty. We want to see the nature. We want to see the trees. We want to see everything. We want to enjoy the view on the way down that mountain, right? So we want to make sure we're coming down that mountain safely, and the rules for coming down that mountain are different than the rules for going up that mountain, right? Now, here's retirement in a nutshell. This has never, ever, ever changed. It's what I like to call the three-legged stool. You've got Social Security, you've got pensions, and you've got personal savings. Now, this is the way it used to look like, right? Here's what it looks like today. Here's what it looks like today. Izaac mentioned less and less people have a pension than ever before, right? Social Security is not covering all of our retirement, which means more and more of our retirement is having to fall on our own personal savings. Call it a 401k, call it an IRA, call it personal investments, mutual funds, call it real estate. It's falling on our own shoulders. And after I go through some of these risks of driving income in retirement, you're going to start to understand why our employers cannot afford to take this risk. You can start to understand why Social Security is being stressed, right? So I want to go into some of these risks that we're going to be hitting in retirement, right? We've got inflation and healthcare, interest rates and taxes. Izaac hit a little bit on the taxes. You got longevity, market, and withdrawal, right? I want to focus on these last three risks, right? These last three risks. Now, Izaac talked a little bit about withdrawal. I'm going to go to a little bit more detail on that, right? The longevity, the market, and the withdrawal are three risks that we really did not have to worry about when we were growing our assets. But they are going to rear their ugly head at us, whether we want to ignore it or not, in retirement. The question is, are we ready for it? Have we prepared our portfolio for it? Because our portfolio is no longer just a growth vehicle. It's going to have to become an income vehicle, particularly if it's in a 401k or an IRA or a SEP IRA or a 403b or a TSP. It's going to be a forced income vehicle, right? So here's the first risk I wanted to dig a little bit into. This is the longevity risk. Now, you may look at this like 95% of the people I look at, right? And after I share this with you, you may say, no, not me. You got the wrong person. This isn't going to be me. Now, what you're going to see is the risk, the longevity of a 65-year-old couple, 50% chance that one of them are going to live beyond the age of 92. When I started in this business in 1992, that risk, that age was way back in the 70s. And back then, everybody said, Roger, you got the wrong person. I'm going to live to 64. I'm going to live to 68. Now, what do I get? I'm going to live to 84 and I'm going to live to 88. There's something about the 4 and the 8 that people are stuck to. Look, I have fiduciary responsibility. Elsa mentioned having fiduciary, being with New York Life, we have a fiduciary responsibility to you to let you know that there's a 50% chance that you or your spouse will live beyond the age of 92 if you're currently 65, right? If you're younger, that's probably going to get pushed further down the street. Here is the market risk, right? We understand market risk during our growth years, right? We understand it's time in the market. Now, I want to prove to you it actually truly becomes timing of the market. What you have here are two investors with $100,000 each, right? They both pull out an income stream of 5%. What you're going to notice is one person ends up with 58,000, the other ends with 26. They both get an average return of 7%. You may be asking yourself, how could this be? How could they end up with different dollar amounts? Well, here's the reason. Portfolio one, which is blue, gets 10% every single year, except the 9th year, right? You'll see they get a negative 20%. The orange person gets 10% every single year, except for the 2nd year. And when that occurs, right, they get their negative 20. It's a bigger negative 20 because it's a higher value, right? 20% times a higher value is going to be a bigger drop in their portfolio. So that rule, it's time in the market, really flips around on us and it becomes timing of the market when we withdraw money out. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this last risk. This last risk is called the safe withdrawal rate risk. Most people aren't even aware it exists, or if they are familiar with it, they heard about the 4% rule. Economists calculated in 1994 that the safe withdrawal rate amount from a portfolio is no more than 4% per year. That means if I've saved $100,000, they're telling me I should not pull out more than $4,000 a year. You know, a little sticker shocked? I know I was the first time I heard that. I got even more sticker shocked about 5 years ago, because 5 years ago, they redid the number and the number was 2.8%. That means for every $100,000, the economists are telling me, Roger, you can't pull out more than $2,800. Now, that puts Shawn and I and Izaac in a little bit of a quandary when we're building portfolios, because we know people have their needs. They've got to meet their needs. And if the economists are telling us we can't pull out more than 2.8, we now have to find other resources other than just doing a traditional withdrawal. Sometimes we do a withdrawal. Sometimes we use CDs and drive income off the CDs. And then there are other times we start looking at some other alternatives, right? But the first thing, and Izaac mentioned it earlier, we have to do the calculation. What is our shortfall? What's our guarantee amount that we've got coming in from Social Security or pension, if we're lucky enough to have a pension, right? Maybe we got some money coming in from some other investments. What is that shortfall? Because retirement is about chipping away at income, chipping away at our retirement expenses, a little here, a little there. And if once we know what our gap is, then we can start figuring out what risks do we want to take. Do we want to do a withdrawal risk? And do we want to take on the risk of the marketplace? Or do we want to look at some other alternatives? And there are ways that most Americans are not aware that we can actually guarantee an income stream for life, right? Where a person can put in a certain amount of money and we will guarantee them an income stream for them or their spouse or both of them for the rest of their life, eliminating the longevity risk. And here we've got a couple, they were planning ahead of time, right? They were implementing their plan and they said, we took care of the kids. Let's now start the plan for retirement. Took $100,000 and they put it into one of these vehicles, and the payout was 8.32%. So in 8 years, when they were 70 years old, it was going to kick out $8,320 every year for the rest of their life. Now, I'm not saying this is the right mode for everybody, but again, it's about looking at the overall portfolio, trying to figure out what piece to put where and when to use what, right? So here we have a payout of 8.32. As a financial planner, that tells me that beats the safe withdrawal rate. It eliminates that longevity risk. And with this type of an income stream, there is none market exposure. So I know no matter what happens, the next March we have, because it's going to happen again, are we protected from it, right? And it's about looking at the different risks and the way we can go about it, right? So I've been part of your trail guide today, getting you up and rejoicing at the top, and then starting to get ready to come down that mountain. But there was one risk, one trail that if you go down, it could be devastating to your trip. And I failed to go over it, right? Because Shawn is going to be addressing this risk. So Shawn, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you. I think you're good to go, right?
Yeah, I'm good to go. So everyone, sorry, I'm going to kind of run through this just due to the timing that we have, right? So we're talking about risk. I like to talk about long-term care. Long-term care is a thing that a lot of people don't really consider, right? So when we look at long-term care, we look at the health, the family, the social relationship, the financial security, and the peace of mind. Let me tell you something. In my experience, in my professional of years of being in this profession, I have seen more families break up, not because of lack of money to survive on a daily basis, but lack of time to put into to taking care of someone else when it comes to long-term care. I've seen more families broken up just due to say, who's going to watch mom? Who's going to take care of grandma? Who's going to do this, right? So long-term care usually solves that immediate need. Next slide, Raj. So when I look at long-term care, I always like to look at long-term care as like, why do we create a long-term care plan? Well, it's very simple. We like to make sure we like to make sure that we like to take care of ourselves, but also be in control of ourselves, right? We like to make sure we maximize, our time at home. And I'm going to explain to that what would that mean in a second. We like to make sure protect our retirement, right? We like to make sure protect our family and can keep a peace of mind. So let's go back up, and when we talk about taking care of where we are. Sometimes when people need the long-term care needs, they either force into a situation, meaning that you got to stay with your son, you got to stay with your nephew, you got to stay with your niece or grandkids or what have you. But long-term care farm planning, you get to pick the option to make sure, say, hey, do I want to stay at home or do I want to be in a nursing home? Right? With a long-term care policy, a lot of times that pays for it, right? So if you have like a granddaughter or a grandson or what have you, the long-term care policy can pay that granddaughter, grandson to make sure they're certified to take care of you. Protect your retirement. A lot of people don't understand. One of the biggest, and I'm talking about the largest killer to a retirement plan is healthcare. So if your healthcare is not accounted for when it comes to retirement planning, you will. I'm seeing it today. I've seen people withdraw $20,000, $30,000 a month on a regular basis, sucking down their retirement accounts, right? And instead of them using their money to live, they need that money to pay for their long-term care expenses. And also protect your family. A lot of times, it's when long-term care needs does come up, it's very, very, no one saw it coming. So sometimes, the family don't have enough money to pay for it. Maybe, you don't have enough kids. Maybe you don't have no dependents or anything like that. So that's why long-term care protects a lot when it comes to your home, protects your retirement accounts, and also protects your family. Next slide, Raj. Okay. When you look at long-term care, right, everyone says, oh, I'm going to be fine. My kids are going to take care of me. Well, the sad thing is 52% of Americans will need long-term care once they hit over the age of 65 to 70 years old, right? And especially, I hold this very, very dear to my heart because, I take care of my mom. So I like to make sure that my mom is okay. So 50% of American women will need long-term care. Why is that? Women do live longer than men. That's just a factual. This is a statistical factor. When I look at long-term care, most men usually die before women, right? And when most men are dying before women because of our bad healthy habits, I think, right? Women tend to live a little longer. So as you live a little longer, long-term care becomes an immediate need, because who's going to take care of grandma? Who's going to pay for it, right? So when I look at long-term care, I also like to make sure that regardless of what, we have some kind of plan put in place to say, hey, if anything happens, grandma is taken care of. Next slide, Raj. So when we look at long-term care, we like to look at the 4 pillars, right? And I think I talked about this earlier. The who, the where, the how, and what's the solution, right? Who will provide the care if you need it, right? Where is it coming from, right? It's like a lot of times I see a lot of people say, oh man, I got enough money saved up, or, the government would take care of me. Well, that is somewhat true, but not always a true factor, right? We like to say, where do you want to receive your care? A lot of people like to be in their own home. I know if I built my home and I paid for my home is paid for, I want to make sure I stay in my home. What long-term care does is provide someone to come inside my home to take care of me, and to make sure either I have a home health aide, a skilled nurse, or what have you to take care of me. Then it goes, how would you pay for your care, right? A lot of times, I always tell people, either pay on the upfront now, or you're going to pay on the back end later on, right? And trust me, 95% of the time, it has never failed. People always will pay on the back end, or you're going to pay on the front end. On the front end, you buy a long-term care policy that fits your situation. If you pay it on the back end, you're going to kill your whole entire retirement account. Next slide, Raj. So when we look at the national average, right, of people that's spending money on long-term care services, roughly about $172,000 per person when it comes to the total care of taking care of someone. So I like to ask a question: who has 172? Let's call it $200,000 sitting around just waiting, to go ahead and take care of us? Then we have to track inflation, right? So with long-term care planning, we would like to make sure that as your long-term care is growing, that you have the proper inflation that's growing with growing inflation. For example, Raj spoke about it. 20 years ago, a loaf of bread used to be $1. Today, a loaf of bread is like $3-4, right? But guess what happened? Your appetite didn't change, right? But even though the pricing changed. So when we look at long-term care, we like to make sure, hey, if you're buying long-term care today, or you're planning today, we want to make sure that it is sufficient amount of money to take care of you later on. Go ahead, Raj, next slide. If we're looking at options, a lot of people say government programs like Medicaid and Medicare. Yes, those programs do have it, but they don't really take care of the total cost. There's something called spend down rule, and I'm going to say this. If you have $1 million on one hand over here, right? And let's say you have a long-term care need. The government is saying that, hey, before Medicare comes in to kick in, you have to spend down all of your assets to $2,000, believe it or not, before they kick in and take care of your long-term care needs, right? So I like to make sure, protect your assets, protect your retirement, and making sure that, hey, if we're proper long-term care planning, you get to keep your $1 million in retirement. I'm just using that as an example. And Medicare can come in and kick in towards your long-term care with our proper planning. A lot of people said, oh, I want to pay for it out of pocket. I'm not a big fan of that, pay for out of pocket. It's just like, for example, when we buy auto insurance, right? No one drives around with auto insurance or without auto insurance and says, hey, if I get into an accident, I'm going to spend another $30,000, $40,000 in cash to go ahead and buy a new car, right? We expect the insurance company to come in and making sure that, they basically pay for our new car. Next slide, Raj. So when I'm looking at long-term care, and once again, I apologize, I'm just strapped for time. I know you guys got to get done by a certain time frame. When we look at long-term care, right, I always say this: have a plan, have a plan, have a plan, right? Healthy, you want to make sure that you take care of your family. You want to make sure you take care of your kids. You don't want to always lean on someone to go ahead and take care of you just because it is a heavy burden, right? Sometimes it's a full-time job. So when we look at long-term care, we want to protect your financial security. And at the end of the day, you work all your life, you help raise your kids, you made sure you take care of everybody. You want to make sure that you have a peace of mind as you're going out. And that's my piece. Cecilia?
Whoa, you went through that really pretty quick.
I'm sorry, but you told me I had like 10 minutes. I
Yes,
can be done by 6.
we have a
I'm
time
sorry.
limit.
Yes,
So
I'm
let
so
me
sorry.
just say this. We went through estate planning, we went through life insurance, we went through investing, and we went through long-term care. Our technology team has put the virtual briefcase. Please go to the virtual briefcase link that's in the Q&A. You can find information about Roger, Elsa, Izaac, and Shawn, and there are some other resources there. There is a survey that has also been put into the chat as well. So we're asking that you use the virtual briefcase. If for some reason you forget what the link is or you don't remember, you can always go to AKA UEO. We are Target 3, and you can find these resources there as well. We have received so much information. I just want to say I'm a personal fan of long-term care. Whether you have children or you're single or any scenario, long-term care is something that I encourage individuals to buy. I encourage individuals to look at estate planning as well. You want to make sure you have something in place for that. Of course, you always want to have more than one pocket per Warren Buffett. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have some type of life insurance in place. On that note, I'm going to pass it over to Nakia Showell, Dr. Showell, and she's going to give us some closing remarks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Wright Brown. And wow, what a wonderful seminar. I am Dr. Nakia Showell. I'm the Vice President of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Upsilon Epsilon Omega Chapter, and we are so happy that you all have joined us today. I want to extend a sincere thank you for firstly our organizers, Dr. Wright Brown and Mr. Shawn Hart, and of course a very special thanks to our amazing speakers, Attorney Smith, Mr. Banville, Mr. Hart, and Mr. Reis for your presentations. These were amazing. And of course our audience. And when I think about, just reflect very briefly on what we've heard today, 2 words come to mind: empowerment and preparation. And now we're primed with, some of the basic tools to think about our future, our legacy, and to plan financially. And this, really is very satisfying. It gives us a sense of control during a period of a lot of uncertainty. So again, thank you to our speakers for, giving us this wealth of information. Again, please feel free to complete our survey, the link that was put in the chat. And for more resources and how you can get in touch with our expert panelists, please go to the website where you will see our virtual briefcase. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.